Look what you did, you little jerk.
What's going on there, jerk faces? It's your boy Andy, and you're watching the Circle of Jerks podcast. I know you're probably tripped up a bit because I'm sitting here in the host seat, but
hey, no one ever told me about musical chairs. I did not sign on to this. That wasn't part of the damn contract that I agreed to.
It's part of the fine print. Dan.
Very fine. Stupid fine print.
I think you as a Jew would appreciate the fine print.
It's in
fair.
It's in number 2 font. So
it's in number 2 font. Yeah, that's pushing it even with my hawk eyes. Yeah.
But yes, this is Circle of Jerks podcast with today me, your boy Andy, with Dan the man, our honorary jerk, and the homeboy Rob, who today is a special treat for y'all. You get to find out all about Rob.
All right. No one wants to know anything about me, but hey, you know what? Too bad.
But yeah,
because we initially early on we started with kind of like we had planned these sets of interviews of each of the jerks. It started with me, and then for some reason it never went beyond past me.
Started and stopped. I think there's a separate reason for that.
I think it was because what was it? We had just decided to get, we decided to put the podcast on hold to wait till we got better equipment. And so actually, you're actually benefiting because the first interview, my interview was done like the old way, the kind of like the crappy way.
Yeah.
So
those first couple episodes that I was part of, is it 3 years ago? Yeah, it's our 3-year anniversary.
4, almost going on 4. Yeah.
What was it?
Yeah, we started like sometime around this time.
It was April 2017, I think.
Yeah,
it was a little before that because it was before
right.
baseball season. Oh yeah, but it might have been 2017 instead of 2018. I might be a full year off.
You might be going
maybe it's 4 years.
Yeah,
we're getting there.
I couldn't remember which year. I just know it was like March very early April because it was that baseball episode.
Yeah.
And so it was right before the season started, so it had to be really mid to late March.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, this episode is all about Rob. We'll be interviewing him. If you ever had questions about Rob, you're in luck. If we got any Rob fans out there,
there's no Rob fans out there.
Hey, there's an OnlyFans section.
I know, right?
Every single person and every single thing. Yeah.
Right? My wife is not even a fan of me, so
well, you can't win them all.
Yes, throughout the years, I think we made allusions to Rob and some of the things like him being married and it's now
all a lie, all lies.
I know, right? Yeah,
he's not a real person. It's all a hologram.
It's a deep fake.
It's a deep fake.
Yeah, and his wife is like George Glass. Anyone?
Yeah. Manti Te'o's on the phone. He'd like to talk.
Yeah. No one's ever seen her. Andy denies her existence.
I do.
Picture it ain't real.
Yeah, I really do. Yeah. I have to because she wants my approval so much. That I have to deny her.
Yeah.
This isn't some Norman Bates thing where like I'm playing both parts, like my wife and myself, and like my mother.
You're not Eddie Murphy playing all 8 roles.
Hell yeah! Oh my god, dude, he perfected that. He perfected that.
He really did.
Because
Tyler Perry did it after him.
Right. Yeah, Tyler Perry.
You could also argue that maybe like Jaleel White kind of kicked that off too with Family Matters because he did like a lot of the playing different characters.
No.
I would still one or two others besides Urkel.
Eddie Murphy.
I would still say
Murphy,
No, but Eddie Murphy also started it off too because like I believe it's
Coming to America.
Coming to America.
Because that was before the Nutty Professor.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I haven't seen that movie in forever.
Yeah, but he plays like the 2 barbers, and he plays he plays a Jewish guy in the barber.
Yeah.
No shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone in that room, I think, besides Arsenio Hall, is Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Well, Arsenio Hall plays.
He also plays a handful of other roles.
Yeah, he plays he plays one of the barbershop guys, and then he also plays like the minister.
Yep.
No kidding. Okay, I had to rewatch.
Yeah, especially since that'll be a good one to review when the new one comes out. Maybe we'll go back and do a.
I will definitely. Because it was. I'm not sure if I want to watch the sequel.
Well, the sequel one, I'm having some problems with it.
Look, we all know that we have problems with sequels and well documented.
Well, especially sequels that come after 40 years, basically.
Yeah. How long's it been? Probably 30.
From the 80s. Yeah.
So, right. Probably 30. You're probably right.
Closer to 40 than
You're probably right. Yeah.
But, yeah, it's, you know, it's,
I mean, changed also in 40 years.
Crystal Skull. Tron.
You're just asking
Tron
for
Legacy's
trouble.
not bad.
Yeah, Tron Legacy
was okay. That was one of the less poor
because it was
long-time sequels.
Because what it did is enhance the visuals, which you know I think went a long way to sell it. Or you know, if they had like the visual technology up to date back then, I think coupled with the story, I think would have been better.
Well, and the original story of Tron is actually not bad. Like, I actually really like it. You know, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you know, it sucks." You know, it's just it's like, no, it's actually a pretty good story.
Right.
But real quick, I'll give a commercial break when we were talking about Eddie Murphy playing, you know, a dozen roles, different characters in the same film. I'll give a sneak peek for, as a matter of fact, the Nocturnal Transmissions that we're going to be recording later today, of kind of the opposite, where we're going to be reviewing a movie, and I won't even say which one it is, but it's a specific sci-fi movie where you have about 4 or 5 different actors playing, as it turns out, the same character.
That's kind of that was kind of unique that happening. You know, something like I don't think that's really been
I've never seen anything
before. Quite like
opposite,
that.
Like you say for Eddie Murphy and others, you know, that's been common throughout.
Actually, technically, no. Eddie Murphy was not the first. Think of Peter Sellers, was kind of the guy that really originated that. Because you walk like Doctor Strangelove,
good call.
Is, you know, he's playing 4 or 5 different characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Peter Sellers, and then Eddie Murphy definitely perfected it.
I will say that Eddie Murphy perfected it.
There's a whole nother level when you're playing 12 different roles in the same scene, you know? Who are talking to each other.
All right. But anyways, back to the subject at hand, which is Rob. So I guess my first question would be, you know, or just allowing you to speak. Tell us a little about yourself.
A little bit about myself. Well, obviously, like you all know that I enjoy movies. You know, obviously we talk about them all the time.
Pretty much.
You know, I'm a big sports guy. I pretty much watch everything. Although I've started to realize that I was a huge sports fan back in like the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Though there are some still sports today that I still like watch fairly regularly. You know, like baseball, auto racing. I've started to get back into football a little bit, especially now that my Bills are doing actually pretty damn well.
They got pretty close this year.
Not tearing your hair out anymore every single season.
I mean, it's being a 30-year long suffering fan is just man, it's rough.
I feel it with my Lions. So
we understand
Lions
each other.
fan,
we do understand.
Yeah, I know.
I know. It's amazing.
That's
the look and just the sound that everyone says. You're a Detroit Lions fan. Oh man, I'm sorry.
The one thing I'll say is like at least he's not a Cleveland Browns fan.
Yeah, right. Which is starting to change.
The new Browns or the old Browns?
Well, the new Browns. Well, but the old Browns were good. The old Browns are in Baltimore.
Well, I mean, that's why I asked. Like, the
old Browns have won several championships.
But it's weird because they sued for the record of the old Browns. It's like,
that
why?
Was one of the weirder things. Yeah. Hey, the old Browns, really old Browns in like the 50s and 60s,
they
had the most championships of anyone until the Packers eventually caught them, and the Steelers and Patriots since then.
But obviously I'm a sports guy. I'm a movie guy. I like, I'm a gamer. I love, video games. I have pretty much every console. I haven't gotten any of the new generation yet. Like I don't have a PS5 or a Switch yet or the whatever the fuck Xbox is calling their new system. It's so their systeming is so
their naming
is because it's like what was it? What was the Xbox and then
it
Xbox
was 360
and then it went to Xbox One and then it's the Xbox like
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think next was like I think the next is fraction. So like Xbox 5/8
square root of 5.
Yeah, whatever the fuck they're calling
Xbox 5/8 or 3/16.
Until they come up with some more like exclusive content with that, I'm probably not going to get the Xbox console. But my wife wants a Switch too, so that's okay. All right, I'll get you a Switch because I want it too.
What's that game that everyone was like like at the beginning of the lockdowns. Animal Crossing. That's right. That's
Animal Crossing is a big
Crossing
one.
and Fortnite.
That I'm not a big Animal Crossing guy. Like there are games that I haven't really played many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. The genre, like in that genre of like Animal Crossing, I like. There's a great game called Stardew Valley, which is kind of like more. It's a new game, but it's more in like the 16-bit like Super Nintendo style gaming.
Mm-hmm.
But like Harvest Moon is another one that I really like. That's within that genre that I think is a little bit better. But I'll have to give some Animal Crossing a little bit of a try. I haven't really dove into that series that much. The Nintendo games, the new Nintendo games that I'm kind of interested in. There's there's the new Super Mario Maker that I really want to dive into. The new Breath of the Wild is coming out. There's a bunch of like good games that are exclusive to Nintendo, and I'm a big fan of exclusives. Give me a reason to buy your console.
Right.
Like, give me games that I can't get on another console.
Right, proprietary stuff.
That to me makes me want to buy the console. Like, if I can play it, cross-platform, which to me is the problem with like the Xbox. PlayStation has so many great exclusives that I want to play. And Xbox doesn't really have enough exclusives to like warrant me spending $500 on a new console. And the reason I have the Xbox One that I have now is because I bought it off my friend for like $150, and then I was like, okay, well that's worth it. And now I can buy the 4 or 5 exclusives that I really wanted to play.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm a gamer. I'm I don't read quite as much as I used to. I used to read everything. I started
in past episodes. We've established that Rob's a nerd.
Yeah, I'm a huge nerd. Well, I mean, I was able to read at a very early age. I started reading even before I got to like school. I started reading when I was 3, and when I went to kindergarten, I perfected. It's like they helped me perfect like my reading and writing, and from there I just like took off, and like I was reading stuff probably like 5 or 6 grade levels ahead of like my class. Yeah, because I was reading like a lot of the great classics in elementary school. I was reading like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, The Count of Monte Cristo, David Copperfield, all these great classics that people read, and I obviously like there's obviously the language issue, but that forced me to like go in the dictionary, study the words, figure out like what's being said.
For all you little kids at home, a dictionary is an actual book that you use to look up other words, a physical hard copy book. So similar to Wikipedia, but yeah.
Here's a little bit of a side. The dictionary is very interesting, right? So a lot of people like thinking like, oh well, do words ever get like actually eliminated from the dictionary? And in the sense, like the dictionary that we kind of like have that we carry around in our house or like in our pocket, those are actually a very like it's a smaller version of what the dictionary. It's a condensed dictionary. Right. So yes, words may be like either added or taken out of those, but the actual like dictionary, because words never get eliminated from the dictionary. Obviously some become like obsolete that they don't get used as often, but there is an actual it's several $1,000s, but you can actually get the entire dictionary. It's like some like English 22 or 23 volumes of every word that has ever been put into English language, and which I kind of want to get, but I can't justify spending that much money to do it.
I mean, especially now with the new wife. It's like,
but I would like.
Sorry, honey, I could have got you a nice thing for your birthday, but I wanted to decide to get a dictionary.
£1,000 dictionary.
Yeah. Well, no, I was
$1,000 dictionary, which probably is $1,000.
Though I can't. Now they do have an electronic version that you can subscribe to for. I don't know how much it is, but I would maybe try to do that. Because I think that would be just something interesting. Because I think I like words. I like from a very early age. When I speak, a lot of people are like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what are these words?" But that was
one of those dictionaries that you were mentioning in terms of the entire English language lexicon. I have an old version of that, which is almost an antique. It's from the 30s, and it is. About 5,000 pages, hardback, weighs 20 pounds.
I would love to see that, by the way.
And one of these days,
bring it over and let me see it. I'd like to take a look at it.
I'll bring it over. Yeah, it basically has its place in my house. It probably is both the most valuable and certainly the most intrinsically valuable book that my family has.
Yeah, because this the new one that they're working on right now, as far as like the kind of the as they've been like adding all the new stuff into it, is like it's the 3rd edition, because I think that right now the current one that's available is the 2nd edition, which is but yeah, it's still it's like a several $1,000s.
It makes sense, yeah.
But I like I said, I just thought that was kind of cool that I didn't realize that existed, and I kind of stumbled across that. But yeah, because when I was a kid, instead of being able to hang out with my friends during the summer, my dad would like force me to study vocabulary and like write, and so that's why I developed. Well, I mean, reading helped too, where you develop a pretty large vocabulary. You become a better speaker, better writer, and so that's kind of part of like where my nerddom
that's
started.
funny because I remember one time I wrote something for a class, and the teacher like complimented me, saying like, "Oh, you read a lot as a child, didn't you?" And I was like, "No, not even a little bit." And I actually didn't read a lot. I just watched a lot of TV.
Yeah, you're the opposite of me.
Yeah.
You got all of your knowledge from like a lot of you watched highbrow television though, like where you watch stuff like like the Looney Tunes, which had a lot of great.
True, that's true. Yeah, because like Looney Tunes, Animaniacs,
were all
Pinky
the
and the
Animaniacs
Brains.
generation.
There were a lot. There was a lot of
an Animaniacs.
So yeah, it's animated, but it's highbrow television.
It's very sophisticated television, and a lot of the jokes like.
Oh, they're meant to go way over the kids' head. They're meant for like teenagers and even more so adults who are watching with their little kids or whatever and passing said, "Oh, this is a fascinating cartoon." It's basically like Animaniacs has always been one of my favorites because, like you said, it's so highbrow. It's both educational, funny. It's a mixture of like the Saturday Night Live, as meets Sesame Street, if there is such a thing. That's kind of a decent analogy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a decent analogy.
It is a variety show. It's I think it was supposed to kind of be a spoof on the original Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows variety show. And that Carol Burnett and so many other famous entertainers kind of copied that type of variety show style, and suddenly you have in the late 80s, early 90s, Animaniacs is a cartoon version.
The cartoon version of it.
And it's funny because a lot of some of the people I kind of like talk to or hang out are much older than me at times, and they're like, "How the fuck do you know this stuff?" It's like, I don't know. I'm like, I pick things up, and it just gets stuck in my head. Like, so I know like a lot about like pop culture from like. Way before I was born.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interestingly when you said like, reading forced you to look up words and stuff like that. I mean, I kind of have I'm sure I've recounted this story, but I remember one time I was watching The Simpsons and they had used the word pornography. And I was like 7, and then I went to my older sister and I asked her, "What does pornography mean?" And she just had her face was like, and then she just like walked away from me, like not answering my question.
How old was she at the time? How much older was she?
She was 9 years older than me.
She's 9 years older. Okay,
so she was like
she was a teenager. She's definitely okay, right?
So she knew what it meant.
Oh yeah.
But she's like, she walked away. Yeah, how does my 7-year-old brother know this?
Oh, The Simpsons. So that was another show. Obviously, I watched that too.
Talk about highbrow television, which is often not described even historically as that. The Simpsons.
It really is highbrow.
It really was highbrow.
The Simpsons, South Park, Family Guy to a slightly lesser degree. It's surprisingly for
Futurama is very highbrow.
Futurama absolutely, both the Groening shows. Yeah,
yeah.
For lowbrow comedy, maybe it's actually highbrow intellectual TV. It really
very much so. Yeah.
I think that's one of the genius things of Matt Groening is that he can take highbrow concepts and then fit them within a lowbrow context.
Yeah. So you're kind of the opposite of me. I was more of like the classically like reading books. And also to a lesser extent playing a lot of like the RPGs that I played, like Final Fantasy and stuff, where it's
forced to read the dialogue.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's like you're playing a book.
You are playing a book.
There's so much dialogue to read.
Right.
It's a video game version for those who are, older than, say, 50 or maybe even younger and have seen this, the choose your own adventure type of book genre.
Yeah. That's right.
That's what especially early RPG video games.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I still love a lot of those like old classic games, just because it's just.
I was always fascinated when I was introduced, probably only as a teenager, not as a little kid, to those choose your own adventure. I said, "Hey, I recognize this. It's an RPG video game."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really is. So yeah, that's kind of like a little bit about me. That's like kind of the stuff that I'm into.
Any siblings?
No siblings. I was the only child. No.
Always a asterisk there. No.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And no, that's not
My
that's
parents
not a slam against his dad. It could be a slam against his mom too.
No, my parents always threaten me that they'll kill me like they did like my my past siblings. It's
right.
like, but I don't have any siblings. Exactly. But no, I know.
But then, that might also go towards like your high intellect because your parents were spent like so much, gave you so much attention.
Yeah, and it's funny because like obviously like I'm the one thing that like my parents always kind of instilled on me was like kind of being able to think for myself and be very independent. So there's a lot of times where like I didn't like, oh my god, I need like someone like spend time with me or all. It's like most of the time like I played by myself. Like it was and I wasn't like and Dan would probably know better than me. Like I don't think I was like one of those kids like, no, don't touch my toys. Like I was always like, hey, let's play together, let's share.
Yeah. We certainly didn't have. I was also an only child growing up, and I now have 3 stepbrothers, but they're much younger. So growing up, until I was
you're pretty much my brother,
teenager, right? Exactly. And I gravitated towards other only children, or occasionally guys with sometimes an older sister who still basically didn't get
right.
They were basically an introvert and often as an only child, so you can relate to that point.
Kyle, it is kind of weird. I think especially if you're the only son in a family and like you have like at least one older sister, I think you're practically an only child. Rob likes to say that I'm practically an only child.
Yeah,
I'm the only boy, or I'm the only son.
And the third musketeer of our elementary school group was that same way. He had an older sister who was a couple years older, and for all practicality, he was an only child.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, me, doubly so because I had 2 older sisters, very much older than me, and I come from a very traditional Korean family, and so I admit it. I was treated like a prince. I never had to do anything. My sister, if my sisters ever try to offload their chores onto me, my parents would like immediately yell at them.
Yep, the prodigal son.
Yeah, and if I tried to, if I was doing something and I had like made a mess or I broke a dish, and my sisters were like even like just in the house, they would get they would get in trouble because like, why did you let your brother do this?
Right, right.
So.
Yeah, well, I mean, growing up, because I was never just like just given like everything I wanted. I wasn't treated like some special thing, but the one thing that like my parents always said, like anything that like is going to help like your education or like books, as much as you want, you can have as much as you want in that realm, which is great because I love books. And especially when I started getting more into like history, I was I really kind of dove into that a lot. So I essentially at that point it was like unlimited resources, for that, like some of the other like luxuries, like the gaming and stuff, like gaming stuff, like a lot of times, like, that was like special, like, for birthdays or like Christmas or like, I did chores so that I could like earn that stuff, which is, I think made me like a better person in that sense. Like I wasn't like one of those like asshole, like, only children that just is a hellish to like hang out with, because I've been I've been around some of those people. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude, like relax. Like
I feel like I teach 80% of them out of every class.
I mean, every kid kind of has like those stages every once in a while, but like I don't feel like I was ever that like selfish kid. Then again, I didn't necessarily have like a ton of friends, like, mainly like Dan. I've known him my entire life. He is my brother. And Peter, who's been on the podcast too, he's, I've known him probably the second longest. He's my brother too. Like we hang out all the time. And then Andy's kind of become into that to that fold too. So
and that's something that I know RJ and I share, and I think Andy too, although I've never asked you straight out, is we qualify as introverts, but very comfortable within our own skin introverts.
Oh yeah. I don't feel like weird.
Exactly. And people like us tend to gravitate towards, just a small handful of long-lasting friends, often lifetime friends, instead of, make a new friend or make a new 10 friends every few months and then add to your friend group and you lose some, you gain some.
There's always going to be that a little bit, but the people
those are acquaintances, and separating what's a friend from what's an acquaintance,
or at least, or I think
I think are a little more between the two. You're comfortable in groups of people, but at the same time,
I'm surprised that I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert. But I think my thing was like meet a bunch of people, befriend them, and then kind of like whittle them down to like the people that I really relate to or who have shown me like loyalty or like that they have my back, and so like I keep them within keep them like in my pocket. And but I think that's kind of like how me and Rob kind of met, because we met through James, and then I wasn't expecting us to become as close as we did, but just
the more and more like that we hung out, it's like realized like dude, like we realized like we were very
we're very similar. We have a lot of our thinking is also the same as well. Like the way that we reach to conclusions is also
it's getting to the point where like where we finish each other's sentences. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, like even in when we do our movie reviews, a lot of times we're very much simpatico, and like it's like the rating that I give it, it's the same that the Rob.
And we don't talk about it.
Yeah, we don't talk about it beforehand. It's just like
twins separated at birth. RJ and I might be brothers from another mother type of thing. You two, in many ways,
was it that Patty Duke show, like Identical Cousins or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
It feels like that sometimes. Even like my wife is like so annoyed by that. It's like, you guys stop thinking alike.
But that is a segue. Another thing that you two share, and is something you haven't touched on yet, is your faith. So, religion being a huge part of your life. And I'm curious about both the backstory and a little bit of the description there.
So with that, I became a Christian, much later in life. I wasn't. My parents didn't go to church.
You weren't born into.
Yeah, most of my family does not go to church. When it was, I think like around like it's been 20 years, I think now, a little over 20 years, and we had some neighbors move in across the street from my parents' house, and they invited us over for like a housewarming party. It's middle of summer, so San Fernando Valley is fucking hot in the middle of the summer. And they had a pool, and like my parents couldn't go, but like there's gonna be kids there. It's like, why don't you can go if you want. I was like, all right, cool, I'll go. I didn't know anybody obviously, but I went, like was hanging out with the kids, swimming and stuff like that. And the around that time, like, as you get older, you start to think, kind of like your brain starts to expand, and you start to think more about like, what's kind of like what the point of life is. And I was thinking that way, not in like a, oh my God, what is the point of life?
Yeah.
No, but it's more of like
emo.
Not in the emo way, but like more of like, I know that there's something bigger out there than just
philosophical, existential.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And people tried to share like other like religions to me, like they were I had
the
friends that were
a little oversharing. Definitely such a thing as oversharing.
No, I had Dan and I didn't necessarily talk about it, obviously too much at the time, like, his like Judaism or anything like that, which, is, much closer to, what I obviously believe in now than, some of these other religions. But like, there was friends that were like Hindu, there was some that were like, Mormon and all, all sorts of stuff.
You had that good Mormon contingent, which always fascinated me in elementary school. Many of that same group of friends.
Yeah.
I went to high school with. And that always fascinated me. But of course, comparative religions is my shtick.
Yeah, but then like when they would share kind of like what what their like religion like believes in and stuff like that, I was like, I didn't say it to their face. I was like, that's fucking stupid. It just didn't make any sense.
I'm a baseball fan, but when something's a little bit too far out of left field, I say,
I was like, oh, thank you for sharing. Like, but I'm not interested.
It's a cool story, bro.
Yeah, and then, but no, when I went to that pool party, like, they kind of like gathered us all together, and like, and they, the family was like sharing, their how God had blessed them with like this house, and they started to share the gospel message. And when I heard that, I was like, if God is real, that's it right there. Because it's not about something, because I knew it's not, man, the gospel to me is explain the problem that man has. Because all these other religions is more about like, if you have to like, you're the one that can like change things, and like you can become good, and that's going to change everything. It's like, no, I can't. Like, humankind sucks ass. And it's like there has to be some sort of like outside driving force that can change that is outside of us. And to me, Christianity explains that, like, answers that problem, where it's like, we are not good, but God is, and He's going to take care of it.
Right. Because a lot of the religions is like, you're bad, but you can become good.
Exactly, and that's just not. And there's nothing that I saw evidence-wise that
Christianity says you're bad, but it's okay because God is good.
Right,
He's got you. So.
And it's like I said, that doesn't mean that like once it's like you like, oh, okay, I accept God. My work is done. Right. No, there's still work to be done.
It's not an excuse for doing whatever you want.
There's not an excuse to be a dick, which some people take
it just as that,
and have done such terrible damage to the name of Christianity.
Yeah, abuses done in the name of
oh god,
Christ,
it's so awful. But
and His church.
But in reality, it's like, okay, this has to be it. If there's any like religion that's true, to me, this is it. And it was funny, like they were like, okay, if anyone wants to learn a little bit more, raise your hand, and we'll talk to you more. And I was like, and at that time, I'm like much more shy than I am now, and I was like, I want to raise my hand, but like I'll just wait afterwards. I'll talk to them. And right at that moment, I got stung by a bee, and I was like, oh, and I had never been stung before, so I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. So I raised my hand. They're like, oh, it's great. You want to learn more about Jesus? Like, I do, but I got stung by a bee. Can you help me?
Well, yes, we can, and so can Jesus.
Yeah,
this is a two-parter, yes, but I also got stung by a bee.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like how it got started. But unfortunately, I didn't really have a church to go to at the time, so I was like, but I was like, okay, that it made sense to me. Like, I started reading the Bible a little bit, and I met, he's been on the podcast before, my friend Peter, and it turned out that he was a Christian too. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'd never met, another like fellow Christian before. And he's like, hey, do you want to like, we started hanging out a lot. And he's like, hey, do you want to like come to church with me one day? And obviously he's Korean. So I'm like, I don't know if that's going to, go over well because I'm not Korean. He's like, oh, all right. But he kept like, kind of, you know how Peter is. He's kind of a dick in a way. Like, he just keeps pressing and pressing until he gets his own way.
Yep, pretty much.
And
in a nice way.
He's not a dick. He's just insistent.
Yeah. Insistent. Yeah.
In a nice way. He's he'd make a good Jewish person, believe it or not. I don't think I've ever said that, but it just hit me that yes, the nice badgering or nudging, as we say, of Jewish culture. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just a little Jewish guilting you into, ironically, becoming a more faithful Christian.
Yeah. Well, and then it came out one day. It's like, hey, dude, like if you want to hang out with me, you gotta go to church with me. I was like, all right, I'll go. And then I went, and I have not looked back since. And my faith has definitely grown since that point. And like Andy always likes to say, like, I became studied to become a master carpenter just to put up a shelf in my house. It's like, not, like and
that's a good analogy.
Some people would say that like that's maybe like a bad thing as far as like Christianity goes, but like no, I don't quite see it that way. I'm not necessarily I'm not a pastor or anything yet, but I still do. I try to do like some teaching and stuff for for younger people, and I see it as a way that helps me to better share the gospel and to be a better Christian. Whereas because I want to understand as much as I possibly can about the Bible and what it means, what was going on in that time, and how to really live out what it means to be a Christian. And some people will look at me as you're not doing it. And it's, because there's a lot of people who do not take my brand of Christianity very well, and I've definitely been ostracized from the group in some ways, where it's one of those things where I feel like I'm definitely not of the world anymore. I'm not. I don't subscribe to that. But I understand the mindset because I used to be there. And at the same time, I'm a Christian, but I don't necessarily really feel like I fit in there either, because it just feels there's people that grew up in church and that's their whole life, and everything's very black and white. And some of the things that they see me do, or how I, my philosophy of living as a Christian is very icky to them, because and I live that way because the Bible kind of it's not, like I said, it's not a black and white thing. Yeah, there are black and whites, but there's a lot of gray in there.
Oh yeah.
I feel like
Jesus exemplified that, because when he hung around with the worst of the worst of society at that time. Yeah. And it's the religious leaders were saying why, if he's the Messiah, why is he hanging out with all the dregs of society?
Exactly. And that's kind of how I feel
and people think just to add on quickly, and even the language that Jesus used it wasn't always flowery language. Oh, just love each other. And
no, it was not. He was a very harsh guy.
To his
sometimes.
closest, to his disciples, especially the people closest to him, he called them oh, you stiff necked generation, or oh, why are you
idiots?
Yeah, he was calling them idiots.
Forget that Jesus was Jewish, and there's one thing that you mentioned in terms of gaining knowledge. I'm going to put those words to it. That is, you hear about Judeo-Christian values, and which can mean any hundreds of things, but one that always stuck with me that I know that we especially share is knowledge is power. Okay, the
Very
idea
so,
that faith is absolutely great, but if faith is completely blind faith without any foundation at all of knowledge, then for me it's meaningless. Okay,
well, and I
doesn't matter whether it's Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, any Mormon, any religion.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. When I see it as it's not necessarily to puff myself up, to make myself, give myself a big head. I'm not holding it in for myself. It gives me liberty, which is one of the tenets of Christianity. We are to be free. We are free. Knowledge gives me so much liberty.
Knowledge is power. And knowledge is freedom.
And
I feel free knowing what I know. And I want to pass that on to other people. It's you can be free. You don't have to be there's so many people within the Christian community who are they're so locked up, and they're afraid. And it's you don't have to live that way.
Now, you hit the nail on the head to what I believe, and many Jews, both religious and non-religious Jews, feel is the supreme main value of Judaism, which is education and passing on that education, both of religion, Judaism, and the world at large, to your children. Okay, so that passing on, I told you, I've said before in a previous episode.
That's a huge thing in the Old Testament.
Is and of course for Jews, the Old Testament is our Bible. Okay, we call it the Tanakh. And so that we're interpreting the Old Testament without any liturgical New Testament. There is the Talmud, as you know, but that really, its main purpose, not sole purpose, but its main purpose is to interpret the Old Testament for, both daily life and, present and future life. It is not a New Testament, for whatever else it is, and it was written around the same time, et cetera, it's not. So
So that's kind of how
that knowledge is everything.
So that's kind of how I became
the Omega.
So I didn't become, I didn't hit some rock bottom. I wasn't some in drugs or alcoholic,
that type of thing,
and sleeping in a gutter, and someone shared the gospel, and
Your
hallelujah.
eyes were open, right?
Yeah, no, it was more, I came to it as in more of and through logic and reason,
Right. There's a curiosity too.
Right. And I took that step of faith, but the more that I studied and read and dug deeper, I was like, no, this isn't just some it's not just faith. There's so much logic and reason behind this, and to me, my faith is stronger than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt in my mind that what I'm reading about, what I believe in, is real. Mm-hmm. And and I'm, like I said, I have no doubts in my mind. Mm-hmm. Some people might think I'm crazy. Yeah, fine, okay, mm-hmm. great. I don't feel that way at all.
Mm. So answer me a question, if you would, especially for our Jewish or just non-Christian in general listeners, because I fully admit I don't understand it, even though you've explained it once or twice to me. Do you consider yourself a born-again Christian? And probably the prerequisite question, what in your mind does it mean to be a born-again Christian?
Obviously, and Jesus kind of talks about this. It's there's the dialogue between him and one of the Pharisees. It's how can you can't go back into your mother's womb? How can you be born again? And it's not a physical rebirth. It's more of a spiritual rebirth. And because when you accept the gospel message, you are now you are no longer connected to Adam. You are connected to Jesus. So you've become you are kind of reborn in this in a sense where you're a new person. The thing, yes, obviously physically we're still here. Yeah. We still have the consequences.
No, you're
of our
spiritually
past.
A new person.
But you move forward mm-hmm. in a new and like I said, you have a power that you never had before that lives within. We call it the Holy Spirit. It's mm-hmm. It's like I said, we could have a whole nother podcast just on this that mm-hmm. could take several hours. Mm-hmm. But I'll just say you are a new person in a spiritual sense. And you have a power to go against, the sins of the world, the things that were, kind of handcuffing you in the past, all the sins and addictions or whatever else that you had. You now have the power to break that mm-hmm. Because of what God has done for you. Mm-hmm. By accepting the gospel. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of that's essentially what Christianity is. It gives you that power and freedom that you didn't have before. And in Romans it talks about how you've moved from it talks about how Adam and they compare Adam and Christ, mm-hmm. who are very comparable in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Adam, of course, fell as the first man, and most of us are connected through that sin. We're connected to Adam. Mm-hmm. But once we choose Christ, the perfect Adam, in a sense, mm-hmm. We are now connected to that, and we move forward in that sense. So that's kind of what, in a very short way, that's probably very unsatisfying, to be honest.
No, but that's a good description, at least for me, and what one or two things that I was curious about. And the main thing that I just took away from that was the way you're describing it. It sounds like that being born again is one of the main tenets of Christianity.
It very much is, yeah.
So would you say, maybe I'll flip the question on its head a little bit, which is, would you accept and or maybe just describe another fellow Christian who is not born again, and what does that mean compared to their
there is no
faith?
There is no such thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So born again, I really don't like that term, because it says there's some born again Christians, and then there's some not. There's no such thing.
Okay. That's why I wanted to.
Yeah, and clarify. The media and stuff uses that term so often, mm-hmm. which I really hate that term. Right. It's just Christianity in itself. Once you accept that gospel, now I can't judge if someone is a true Christian or not,
or the way that they have their faith, because everyone is
right. But once you become a Christian, you are born again into that. There's no special category, which is I think what a lot of people think that there is. There's no special category that.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that actually specifically clears a lot of things up, in my mind, because as you know, and even though I've shared this before, it's a different type of concept of, say, Judaism, which is, it's almost directly the opposite. You're born Jewish, and I'm not meaning to leave out converts, but that's a small group, and it is a little bit separate because Jews aren't proselytizers, and so therefore, therefore the converts are very much converts by choice. We say Jew by choice. Pretty much. And he hit the nail on the head. We don't necessarily discourage, but lightly we do.
It's weird because
So Judaism is. I believe this strongly. I would say most, if not the vast majority of Jews also believe this worldwide, which is Judaism, it's an ethno-religion, meaning it's a culture first, and this is the belief of most Jews these days, except for maybe the ultra-Orthodox, but that Judaism really is a culture first and a religion or a faith second.
Yeah, well, and the funny thing is, like, from my understanding of the Old Testament too, is that the whole existence of the Jews was meant to be kind of like a proselytizing thing, because they were meant to be a beacon to the rest of the world. Right. And like even like Jonah, although he he went against it, he was meant to go to Nineveh and to share kind of the good news of like who God was, and they accepted, which was the crazy thing. And so I think there was always meant to be some sort of proselytizing among of Judaism, or of the goodness of God to others, and we see like examples of it throughout the old, kind of peppered throughout the Old Testament. But I know like nowadays, like I can't think of like any Jew that's ever talked to me like, "Hey, you should be a Jew." Yeah, it's like, no. Anytime it's like, you really want to be a Jew? Are you insane?
Right. Exactly. Not only is the first part of the "you should be a Jew," right? It's said as a joke.
It's that old joke. It's like Jews are great salesmen, except for when they're selling Judaism.
Exactly. Oh yeah, and absolutely. Both when they're selling Judaism to others, to non-Jews, and even more so when they're selling, or let's say practicing Judaism unto themselves. It's all about going back to that knowledge, that education, that theoretical concept, if you will. In terms of the religious side, the culture side is both ingrained, and we believe it's literally and figuratively in our blood. But there's an old saying that I've told you before, in terms of just how strong the Jewish belief, both the cultural and religious belief, is that knowledge and education, especially of your own children, the next generations, is the important tenet. The line is that Jewish parents will go to any lengths, short of actually practicing Judaism, to instill a sense of Jewish identity in their children.
That's great.
That's the phrase, and no truer words have ever been said in terms of Judaism, in my mind.
Now, I will say that there are, kind of going back to your question too, like there are some tenets or some factions within Christianity where maybe some people might kind of mistake that idea. Like there's certain like degrees of Christianity. There's some.
There are obviously many denominations, of which I've always been fascinated with.
Oh, it's not a monolith. We obviously, but like there are some like some groups within Christianity that kind of similar to like the Book of Corinthians kind of taught their church, way back when, was very focused on what are known as the spiritual gifts. Like there's a whole bunch of them, and
describe one of them.
And mainly like what are known at what we would call today is like the sign gifts. So like there's stuff like you're filled with the Holy Spirit, so you're able to like speak in tongues. So you're able to like speak in different languages. You're able to
some of
give
what
like prophecy.
I call the snake charmers. Some denominations.
Now there are a lot of those. Now I'm not one of those that think that everyone is like that, because there are, in reality, I do believe I know people that are within that community that are actually very, very genuine, and I trust them.
But they just happen to believe one or a multitude of phrases from the Bible in a different interpretive way.
That's true. Like I'm not to the dismay of my wife. I'm not necessarily part of that group, but I don't like discount it. In
you don't reject it wholesale.
Exactly, but there are people within that community who like, if you don't have like these particular gifts, you must
Satan
have like
lives inside you.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's like, but the thing is, when you accept that gospel, there's something that changes within inside you, like, and essentially, like, Christianity, we believe that God lives within us. He, like I said, he is within everyone within the Christian community, the true Christian community. So the fact that like God can indwell within us, but then we can have like demons or Satan in us, that is very false. And I reject that wholesale.
Okay.
But there's people within that community that think that if you don't have particular spiritual gifts, because everyone has one, like one, or even sometimes they have a couple. But if you don't have certain gifts that like everyone can see, you have something wrong with you. And that's
you reading your Bible enough? You praying enough?
Yeah, exactly. And it's wrong. And I said, like, my wife's not part of that group. She does believe in kind of like more what we call the charismatic movement, like where it's like, it's very spiritual gift, like oriented and stuff like that, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that group. I'm not necessarily part of it, but there's nothing wrong with it.
Would the Pentecostal sect be one of those, for example?
Anytime you hear like Foursquare, Pentecostal, charismatic, it's all that the same kind of the same.
Gotcha.
Degree.
No, that helps.
Same animal, different parts.
Right.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not necessarily like into that stuff. Like I'm more. I don't. It just those are not my spiritual gifts. Like I don't. That's just not my thing.
Makes sense. Now that you describe it, actually, you've described it just now, probably better than I've even ever read about that specific group. Sub-denominations, etc. And there actually is a comparative, very much so, a comparative Jewish denomination or Jewish sect analogy to that, which is considered among the Orthodox Jewish sects, but it can span the gambit of actual ritual observance, and we call them Hasidic, which is just the word, one of the words for knowledge, one of the many. We're not like the Eskimos with 20 words for snow, but Judaism in Hebrew probably does have close to 10 words for knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay. And many of them are interchangeable. Very few of them, despite what people might say, have, a
slight
very
variations.
Specific variation. Yeah, and they are slight variations. English has knowledge, wisdom, intelligence, probably has 5 or 6 words for it, maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
And if you asked even a linguist to distinguish between those 5 or 6, they would either say there is none, they're all just straight synonyms, or they would have trouble doing that.
Right.
Hebrew has a little more distinction, but regardless, there's, as I've said several times already, there's a lot more, interest in, what is knowledge, what is wisdom, etc. And so this one group is charismatic, is probably the perfect translation for their group. Okay, despite that the name Hasidic actually means wisdom. It's this is the charismatic branch, the ones who are dancing in the streets and who you often see, for better or for worse, many times for worse, on TV celebrating a little too wildly the Jewish holidays. Those are probably Hasidic Jews. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just to downshift a little bit. Because since you brought up your wife, okay, let's get into that. Like,
that's a great story. Oh yes, I think the viewers,
I think the
jerks out there would love
time
to
we are
to hear.
not just we, but
we were just talking about the so-called greatest story ever told, but this might be one of the greatest stories of today of this podcast.
Oh man,
let's
So I've known my wife. Well, she's off camera, but we saw her. She was walking around, stumbling. I had to wake her up in about like 30 minutes. So, no, I've known her for about 15 years. We I actually was her Bible teacher, way back when. And that's how we kind of met. Obviously I was not romantically
the classic student teacher relationship. No. We love it here on the So Cold Jerks.
That.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, so that's kind of how we met. But then for I think the first year and a half that I knew her, I don't think getting her to talk to me was just it never happened. She just did not want to talk to me at all.
Right.
And then I don't know what changed, but she finally started talking to me, and then she wouldn't shut up. She just kept talking to me.
Did you have a car?
I did have a car.
There you go.
Well, no, because I ended up I actually ended up becoming good friends with her older sister, and her and I hung out a lot. And I got invited over to her place, for her parents' place for dinner and a bunch. Her parents, really took care of me a lot because I was down in San Diego, kind of by myself, and I didn't. So they were, I was a younger guy, make sure you eat and all that stuff, and it was funny, when I went, because I was hanging out with her older sister, I ended up going to their parents' place, and her and her sister are very different, and they don't really look alike. And when I went over to their house for the first time, and I saw my wife, and I was like, "What the hell are you doing here?" It's I live here. It's you two are related. I had no idea. And so after that, we ended up becoming pretty good friends. We talked a bunch. And when I left San Diego, there wasn't many people that kept in contact with me except for my wife, and her sister. And so we ended up becoming talking a lot. And gosh, she talks a lot. Andy knows.
I know.
Oh yeah, we all know here on the COJ podcast.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And we ended up becoming very good friends. And after a time, it was probably 4, it was about 3 or 4 years after that. She ended up, she was of age, and we ended up becoming more. She it's stuff where she was saying was it felt the hell, it felt kind of weird. I was going on dates with some other people, and I was obviously telling her about it, and she's she got all mad all of a sudden. I was like, why are you mad? It's I'm just hanging out with or I'm just doing something else. It's well, I like you, stupid. And it's oh, okay. And I was kind of weirded out by that. I was really? And so that caused us maybe kind of sort of start dating. And then she had to leave for there was some visa problems, so she ended up having to go back to Korea. And actually at that time I initially proposed to her as because I didn't want her to go. And she rejected me, which is okay,
rejection.
But we obviously we kept in contact while she was in Korea. We stayed friends, and she came out to visit me, and kind of visit some other friends out here. And we kind of picked back up again as relationship wise, and then she left. And then, we kind of still kept in contact for a little bit. Then she came back for good, probably about almost 5 years ago now. And, she started school, but she, for whatever dumb reason, she decided she wanted to go to San Jose. And then there was a whole long distance thing. She decided she wanted to do her own thing up there. And we kind of dropped off a little bit, and then
the classic on again, off again, and on off, and on off.
Yeah, pretty much
about a dozen times.
Off.
Pretty much that's pretty much what happened. And then I was actually dating someone completely different at the time, and but all the coronavirus stuff hit, and I was not necessarily worried that oh, she's gonna die or whatever, but it's for her, her immunity's her immunity is not great, and she was up there by herself pretty much. And I was and we hadn't talked in a couple of years, and I was well, hey, are you doing all right? Do you need anything? Do your parents need anything? Does your sister need anything? Because they're kind of all over the planet now. And she's like, no. And then I guess we ended up starting talking, and like kind of like I was, planning something completely different for my life, and she was asking me about that, and she like got mad all of a sudden again. It's like, why are you mad? Like, we're like, I'm not.
It's like, we're not together.
Yeah. It's like we're not together, and that ended up kind of like coming into like where we decided to get married, and that's kind of like how that all kind of came. Everything kind of just came together very quickly. And her and I got married last year, and that's pretty much the story. It's just kind of like this very like on again, off again craziness. She drives me nuts most of the time, but she's pretty great. I obviously like I married her, so I'm kind of stuck now. No matter what,
the love is there.
Right. Whenever Rob's having a spat with the missus, he kind of looks at me, and I just kind of like shrug my shoulders, like, dude, you picked this.
Yeah. Pretty much.
It's your bear to lie with.
But she never watches these things, but she's great. So
she's in the next room, and she might be able to hear us. But, whatever.
She's probably asleep again. I had to wake her. I had to wake her up in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, so. She'll never see this, so it doesn't matter.
She never watches any of the shit that I do here. Like it's a pain in the ass trying to get like stuff recorded now.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be great if like she was interested in like she would be here because she'd be great at it.
One of these days we'll pull her in to be interviewed maybe about herself, and I have a feeling she'll
then she'll just like
herself.
Then she won't shut up.
Right.
It'll be like a 5-hour podcast.
I won't have enough space on my on my computer for the footage. It's just like it's like disk full. It's like It's like, it's like, hey, time to stop. It's like, no, I still got more to say. It's like
yeah, she'll snot on your hand. Right?
Just snot on my hand again. I think I've recounted that story enough times. But you mentioned that you were in San Diego, and I think we've mentioned it before prior, but what was the reason you were in San Diego?
Well, after high school, or before I finished high school, I enlisted in the Navy. I enlisted very early. I enlisted when I was 17.
Did you have to get your parents' permission?
Yeah, I did. That was the only it was either that or the Air Force that my mom would allow. She was like, "You're not going to the Army and you're not going to the Marines." That's which I didn't want to go.
Fun branches. Fun branches.
I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go.
I get the anti-Marine sentiment.
I didn't want to go to either of those branches anyways. But I was like, Navy sounded pretty interesting. And they have there's a lot that you can do in the Navy. And I ended up acing the entrance exam. Like I pretty much I could have done any job that I wanted to. They were trying to get me to become like a nuclear sub technician. I was like, I am not spending a year in a fucking sub. There's just no goddamn way. And they threw a lot of money at me to do it. I was just like, there's just no way.
Like, no, hard pass.
Yeah. It was.
I like eating sardines. I don't want to live.
I will say it was 6 figures, and I do sort of regret that. But I was like, there's just I've watched Crimson Tide. There's no way I'm spending time in this fucking sub. There's just no way.
Did they even? I mean, because I know you're a smart guy, and I know you did good well in school. Did they approach you for like OCS or anything? I think that was definitely offering to send you to the academy.
That was a possibility too, and I was like, no, because I didn't want to. I wanted to be like enlisted. Like
you wanted to work.
Yeah, I wanted to work. I like doing the work. I find more enjoyment in that.
Right.
And I ended up choosing a rating that was, pretty much I could have gone. I can pick and choose pretty much where I want to go because I could be anywhere. And I was a yeoman in the Navy, so pretty much I was dealing with people's pay, like their service records, dealing with inner base like message traffic, stuff like that. So that like I said, it was a good job. It was fun. I enjoyed it. A lot of bureaucracy that pissed me off.
Welcome to the U.S. military.
Yeah.
Hurry up and wait.
Militaries.
Hurry up and wait. Yep. And so I did that, and so that's how I ended up getting stationed in San Diego. That's I got involved with like a bunch of stuff down there, and that's where I met my wife. Way back when, and I don't regret a minute of it. I don't regret that I left the Navy, but I really enjoyed being down there. I love San Diego. If it wasn't so damn expensive, I would probably live in San Diego.
Oh, yeah. The weather
America's finest city, and for most things, that's true, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, I enjoyed that. So that's kind of like my story of the Navy. It's not like, I look at like some of the other people we've had on here, like, like Peter or my friend David, who are or even, Daryl, he wasn't in the Navy, but like, though to me, those guys are real veterans. They went over, they fought in combat. They did, they had shit like, shot at them. They were, blown to hell. And,
was Gay Alex ever?
Yeah, he was in the Marines too. Yeah,
infantry?
He was in the Marine Reserves. I don't know if he ever saw any combat, but like, he's been like, kind of all over the place too. Okay. So, but I see those guys as real veterans. I stayed in San Diego the entire time, which, for me as an only child and the only son, I could, if I wanted to volunteer to go there, which they threw a lot of money at me again to do that, and I was like, I wasn't comfortable with it, so I decided not to, and so I don't, I'm a veteran.
Oh yeah, cause you joined up like right, about the time of like the whole like Iraq.
Right after September 11th, and the Iraq War had just started, all that stuff. And like I said, I don't see I'm a veteran, but I don't really see myself as a real veteran. I'm.
Yeah, you were stationed overseas.
Like you said, I tend to downplay my service time just because like I want to pay more honor to the people that really did something. I helped. Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't, and I don't regret my time in the Navy, but I don't necessarily see myself as like a real veteran. I'm definitely not a combat veteran.
Yeah. I wonder like how my cousins feel, because like I have a cousin who's in the Navy. He's doing the 20 or whatever, so he's gonna get out soon. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what he did in the Navy, but I hope I'm not outing him, but I think he was on the teams.
Okay. Oh yeah, so he's the real deal.
Yeah. And then my cousin, he joined up the Air Force, and he's actually going back in. I think they threw like a lot of money at him and a promotion.
That'd be a fun episode on the podcast, unless it's one I missed that you've already done, is to bring on at the same time 3 or 4 veterans,
I would love to do that.
And Peter together would be great. Maybe David,
and then even Gay Alex.
Yeah, right. Who's not gay, by the way.
He's not gay.
Because he was not in the military during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We just call him that.
Yeah, and then my cousin.
Yeah, because then you have one from each main branch. Maybe not Air Force, but you have at least.
We got the Marines, we got the Army, we got the Navy. Yeah.
Yeah,
not too bad.
And another guy that we're going to have on...
Space Force, future Space Force.
Yeah, another guy that we're going to be having on, too, for Nocturnal Transmissions, talking about movies, actually, he was in the Air Force, so...
Oh, there you go. Perfect. I think that would be a very fun podcast episode.
Yeah. Wow. We can line that up for...
maybe like Veterans
War
Day
stories for Memorial or Veterans Day, yeah.
That's November, right?
Yeah, Veterans Day
or
is
Memorial Day. Well, Memorial Day is for is more honoring dead soldiers.
Yeah. Okay,
I would say Veterans Day is more.
Veterans Day would be
Veterans Day probably. Although
Veterans Day would be more appropriate.
It's funny how historically, and here comes the history teacher of yours truly, the two holidays kind of reversed a little bit. That Memorial Day was started after the Civil War, or possibly during the last year of the Civil War was the first Memorial Day. I'll check that, but basically it was the 1860s, and it was as a tribute to all. Veterans, yes, specifically fallen veterans, but really is a tribute to all veterans. Whereas Veterans Day, November 11th, was just blossomed out of Armistice Day, the end of World War I.
Yeah.
The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month is when the Treaty of Versailles was technically signed to end World War I. And so that was, was until I believe the 70s. It was still, celebrated and observed, but as Armistice Day, as a specific event, not the honoring all veterans that it's come to be in the last 40 years or so. So, those have kind of flipped a little bit in what they honor and celebrate and how the country honors and celebrates those two holidays. But, I think, if anything, Memorial Day is, just as good of an opportunity as any to, honor the branches of the military and get some very fun war stories, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
and David has 1,000 of them.
Yeah, if we do it in November, then it gives us a lot more than enough time to like schedule everything and make sure everyone.
That's true.
Yeah. I think that might be something that we should do. Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, me too.
Sounds like a ticket and a future episode for those who are militarily interested.
All right.
That's pretty good. It was good to hear, the story of your life, and I've known you for almost 30 years. This is going on 30 years of friendship for us. I know it's a wild stat. And yet there are 2 or 3 things that even I didn't know about you, and I heard for the first time. So
cool. That's the great thing about this podcast. We learn, there's stuff that so much that I learned about you when we've interviewed you on several occasions. So same thing with Andy.
Yeah. I mean, more so because we only know each other for like 6-7 years.
Yeah.
Oh wait, when did we first? We met like sometime like 2014.
Yeah, I think it was 2014.
Yeah.
So it's going
about
on
7 years, better part of a decade.
Yeah.
Better part of a decade. But I mean, there's some stuff today that I already knew, and then there's other stuff that was something that I found, something new that I found out, and others were kind of refreshers. But yeah, this is good. This is good.
No, I'm glad to obviously I'm on this podcast all the time, but
this was a good chat. Finishing up a project that was started 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Hey,
but kind of like the it's like the younger brother always gets like the nicer things, and Rob got to be interviewed under better circumstances with better equipment.
Yes. It was worth the wait.
So it was worth the wait.
Just like the military axiom of hurry up and wait. We hurried up to start the podcast, but then waited to save the best for last.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Okay.
Well, I don't have anything else unless you guys have more questions.
No, that's all I had prepared. Did you have anything else to ask?
I think that's about it. We can stay tuned for our next, I'm very excited, episode of, I believe it'll be a Nocturnal Transmissions episode technically, and I'll be guest starring of a very fun movie review.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
That'll be because I have a lot to say.
I have a lot to say too.
It's a fascinating. When I rewatched it, I had forgotten when I first recommended it. It was recommended to me by one of our friends, Daryl, and I'd never heard of it. I was surprised I'd never heard of it as a sci-fi movie.
Right.
But it had a lot more both pop culture and let's say the news of the day and some interesting both gender and identity issues than I had remembered, especially when I recommended it to you. I'd forgotten that until I rewatched it the other day. And I said, I'm actually pleasantly surprised that both RJ and Andy got through this without just turning off their TV and saying, nope, forget it halfway through. Or like 10 minutes into it through. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll say this really fast.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I have to admit that it was a very compelling story.
Very,
very compelling story, and it was and it was told very well. So, that's the only reason why I was able to get through it, as first. You would say.
Right.
So.
Right. Get through that first 20 minutes was getting tougher and tougher until you had, one of the mini climaxes and the aha moment, of this really is a wild sci-fi, exactly. story and not just this hippy dippy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. That's the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope, you found out some things about Rob. And I hope everyone was entertained. Don't forget to check out the library of other content that we have. The episodes from the Circular Jerks main podcast, Nocturnal Transmissions, our weekly live streams, which we have now moved officially to 6 p.m. on Tuesdays, as opposed to previously when we used to do it at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which I hope makes it so that the East Coast fans can join. Is better for them since it would be 9 o'clock them as opposed to being 11 o'clock
bingo
Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media. Oh, I'm sorry, and don't forget if you're into, as Rob said, he's into gaming, and if you're into gaming, particularly the old school games like the Nintendos and whatnot. Rob's gaming show, Up by Up Down. We have a bunch of episodes in the library for that. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Twitter and Letterboxd at PodcastCOJ, and Instagram at Circle of Jerks Podcast. And with all that said, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Peace.